What's good, y'all? It's your boy Marcus, and you're now tuning in into the Be Do Have Investor Mindset podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to analyze a deal. Now, if you're a beginner, most beginners look over the numbers and they get excited because it's a shiny object, a new property, and it can be very exciting. But most importantly, you need to know about the numbers, and you need to know if it's a good deal or a bad deal. So today, I'm going to go over my analyzer, which is in my book. If a fifth grader can do it, you can too. Real Estate Investing Made Simple. Chapter 10 is called Analyze a Deal. And if you go to that chapter and you click the link, you're going to get this exact analyzer, and it can show you simple steps on how to break down the numbers, and it does everything for you. So we're going to go straight to the analyzer. Now, this is a duplex, right? So you got to type in the type of property that you're looking to purchase and the address. So for this example, we're going to put 3 Main Street so you won't get confused. Let's just say hypothetically your property is $100,000, right? So all you have to do is plug in $100,000 and it does the work for you. When you have a duplex, that means you have 2 tenants, right? So let's just say the rent for 2 tenants is $1,250. When you do the math, that's $2,500. So for the month, the rent income for your duplex property is generating $2,500 a month, and for the year, it's $30,000. Now, usually when I analyze a deal, I always put 10% less vacancy rate because 9 times out of 10, in most cases, a property is not always going to be 100% occupied. So I always put 10% vacancy rate because you may have 2 tenants or you may just have 1 tenant. So just in case, I always put 10%, as you can see right here, and it automatically does it for you. So you're losing $250 a month, $3,000 a year, and then that would make it $27,000 a year. But just for this example, I'm going to act like the property is 100% occupied just to keep it simple. As you can see, the property is 100% occupied and bringing in $30,000 a year. Okay, now, when you have tenants in your property, you have to pay taxes and insurance, okay? Without insurance, you're definitely not going to get the property. So for this example, the taxes is going to be $1,800 for the year. Right? As soon as I plug that in, annualized, which means yearly, that's $150 a month. Now for insurance, let's just say that insurance is $1,200. That's $100 a month. Now for water, sewer, and garbage, as an investor, as a landlord, you have to pay for so for the whole year, that's going to total up to $1,800. So that's also $150 a month. Now, when it comes to electricity, right, that's zero because when it comes to electricity, the tenant is going to pay their own electrical bill. So that's one less expense that you don't have to worry about. Now, as you can see, water, sewer, and garbage, I combine that as a total. And just to keep it simple, I just put it in this here. So in total, that's $1,800, $150 a month. So when it comes to the garbage in the next row, I just skipped that because I already did that up here. Now, when it comes to licenses, advertisements, and supplies, I skip that for example purposes only, just to keep it simple. Now for maintenance. Now maintenance is an important expense because things break and unexpected things happen. So you want to have a nice cushion. So when you put $150 a month to the side for maintenance, that's also $1,800 for the whole year. Okay, so this analyzer is extremely simple, practical, and very seamless. All you have to do is plug in the numbers and everything else is done for you. Now, when it comes to lawn service, you got to make sure that it gets cut every month because if you don't cut the lawn, the county inspects the property, it inspects the neighborhood, and whoever doesn't cut the lawn, you actually get a fine. So you have to make sure that your lawn is properly cut and looking neat because it affects the value of the neighborhood. So this is very important. So just for this example, it's going to be $240 a year. That's a month. For snow removal, depending on where your property is, some states snow more than others. So for this example, it's going to be $360 a year. That's $30 a month. For pest control, $120 a year. That's $10 a month. Now, management off-site, aka property management. Now, property management is extremely important because without property management, your property can be a great or a bad deal. So the property management company, it's their job to make sure that your property is operating efficiently and make sure that the tenants pay things on time and also fix things. They also could fix lawn and do snow removal. So just for this example, having a third-party property management company is going to cost you around $2,400 for the year, and that's $200 a month. Okay, so that's about 10% of your income. No, excuse me, that's about 8% of your rental income. Now, when it comes to gas, if you have a gas stove or you're using a gas furnace, this is debatable as far as if the tenant should pay or not, but 9 times out of 10, the landlord takes care of the gas. And for the gas, we're gonna put $600 for the year, and that's $50 a month. So as you can see, as I'm flowing through this analyzer, all you have to do is plug in the numbers and everything else does the job itself. It's very seamless, very simple. It makes my day easier. Now, when it comes to telephone, pool, and elevator, I skip these because as a duplex, you're not gonna have an elevator. Most likely, you're not gonna have a pool and telephone. We live in different times now, so a lot of people have cell phones. And if they do have a landline phone, that's the tenant's responsibility. You don't have to worry about that. Now, for budgeted replacements. Now, this is important because sometimes things happen unexpectedly, and you always want to have a financial cushion put to the side per month just in case unexpected breakdowns or repairs happen. You can already be prepared. So it's going to be $600 for the whole year and $50 a month. So for this particular duplex, your total expenses for the year to operate efficiently is going to be $10,920 and $910 a month. Now, this analyzer is extremely important because when you're looking for a property, you're going to be dealing with brokers, realtors, agents, and sellers. And 9 times out of 10, especially brokers, realtors, and agents, they're going to send you something called a pro forma. Now, pro forma is like projected expenses. It is a projection of what the property could be at the best time of the market. And you don't want that when you're looking for a property. You want actual financials. So usually when I reach out to a broker, agent, or a realtor, sometimes a seller, if they send me a pro forma, I'm going to say thank you for the pro forma, but I need actual financials because the actual financials is the true report card of the property's history and how it's operating. So this is why I always go to the analyzer to see the real true story, to see if the property is a good deal or bad. So the total expenses is $10,900 for monthly. You're going to pay $910. Now, the total net operating income comes up to $19,080. Now, net operating income is extremely important because it is the income that the property makes after the expenses are paid. And this is excluding the mortgage. So I'm going to repeat that. Net operating income, also known as NOI, is the income that the property makes after the operating expenses is paid, excluding the mortgage. Okay? So this number is extremely important because you can gauge on how well this property is generating income after the expenses is paid. Okay? Now, before I go any further, there's a cool trick that I do, right? It's called the 1% rule to see if this property is worth my time. So, as we talked about before, the total rent amount is $2,500 for 2 tenants, right? Now, if the total rent is 1% less of the asking price, which is $100,000, then there's a possibility that the property is not a good deal. So let me explain. $100,000 times 1%, that equals $1,000. If you look at this total rent for 2 tenants, that's $2,500. So that means that it's way above the 1% rule, okay? So if you're just curious to know if this is a good deal as far as rent is concerned, always times the asking price times 1%. Once I understand that, it gives me more of an incentive to keep on analyzing the numbers because right here alone, it gives me an indicator that this is a great deal or a potential great deal, all right? So that's a cool trick that I do. It's called the 1% rule, right? Remember, sometimes the rent might not be that good. That doesn't mean that you should just kick this deal to the curb because there's other ways that you can possibly raise the rent and give the value. So after you find out the 1% rule and figure out that this is a great rent, once you calculate all the expenses and the total expenses and the net operating income, then you get to this section. Now, this section right here will determine how much cash flow you will get, okay? So it's the net operating income minus the mortgage payment, which will equal your cash flow. So these next 2 sections are important because it determines how much cash flow you will receive after all expenses is paid, including the mortgage. So right here is debt services. This fancy word right here, amortization, is basically your loan being spread out across the amount of 30 years. So the longer the amount of years your mortgage is, the lower your mortgage payments will become because there's 2 types of mortgages. There's 30-year mortgages and there's 15-year mortgages. For this example, we're going to use 30-year mortgages. So the longer the mortgage, the better as an investor. Now, when you first get your property and you're going through a bank or a lender, sometimes they're going to ask you to put 20% down or lower. But for this example, we're going to use 20% down. Now, 20% down of a $100,000 property is $20,000. So if you put $20,000 down towards a $100,000 property, the remaining balance of that property is going to have an $80,000 balance. Okay? As you can see right now, now is doing the work for you. It's very simple, very seamless, okay? Now, when you're dealing with a bank or a lender, you're gonna have to pay some interest on that, okay? Because if you put down 20%, the bank is gonna cover 80%. So in return, if they loan you the money, they want some money back plus interest. So just for this example, we're gonna put 8% interest, okay? Soon as I put 8% interest, it does the math for you, as simple as that. So after all your expenses is paid, and after you pay your mortgage, which is $587.01, the total monthly debt service is gonna be $587 because that's your mortgage payment, right? Now, after all expenses is paid, and after the mortgage is paid, and you're having 2 tenants, 100% occupied, your monthly cash flow for this particular property is $1,002.99. Now, I think that's a generous number to be a cash flow. And mind you, this number you did not have to work for. You did not have to exchange your time for money. Your tenants and the property management company that's helping manage your property is helping your property operate efficiently. And after all expenses is paid, your property is bringing in over $1,000 a month. Now, these terms right here, cap rate, value, cash on cash return, and debt coverage ratio, these terms are extremely important, but I don't want to get too much into it. I'm going to do a part 2 video for this portion right here because I don't want to get you confused. Now, this right here, remember what I said, the initial investment is $20,000 because that's 20% of the asking price, and you want your area cap rate to be 8%, right? Now, you're asking why 8%, and again, part 2 of the video, I will definitely explain it, but just for example purposes, I put it 8%, and as you can see right here, based on the numbers and based on the property operating efficiently, these are some great numbers, okay? So as you can see, this is the analyzer that I use for all of my properties to this day, so you won't waste your time or the person that you're dealing with time. Now, all this valuable information is in my book. If a 5th grader can do it, you can too. Real Estate Investing Made Simple by your boy Marcus Rogers. You cannot skip this step when you're looking for a property. It's extremely important, and this is pretty much a cheat code. Within 5 minutes, you can know it's a good deal or a bad deal. You can check out my website. My book is on my website, ascensionmgnt.com. You can copy the ebook or the print version. You can find me on TikTok, The Ascension Team. It's your boy Marcus, and I'm out.